I've decided I'm going in at the home base at 100 years old. I'm going in with my hair on fire, and I'm going in hard, and I'm gonna dive in hard, and I'm going in with a tequila in one hand, a cigar in the other, and I'm going in hard, and I'm not gonna slow down just because I'm 100 years old. I'm just not gonna do that. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it really is trying to communicate is, this is not the time to slow down. This is the time to maybe reprioritize and continue the race differently.
When you find your purpose, it gives you so much energy you never want to get out of the game. And when you have so much to give, why would you? I'm your host, Tim Spiker, and this is the Be Worth Following podcast, a production of the People Forward Network. On this show, we talk with exceptional leaders, thinkers, and researchers about what actually drives effective leadership across the globe and over time. You just heard from Dave Lovell, a serial entrepreneur who has started and grown over 40 businesses during his professional career. Now, if 40 businesses doesn't get your attention, perhaps his volume of education will. Dave has multiple advanced degrees in educational psychology, divinity, and counseling. All of this is impressive, but the real reason I wanted to have Dave on the podcast is so you could get to know him well beyond his resume and accomplishments. I want you to get to know Dave the person, Dave the leader, Dave the investor in the development of others. Because 25 years ago, I was one of those others that Dave was investing in. When I was in my late 20s, he sat me down and had some hard conversations with me. Dave was the very first person to tell me explicitly that I ought to be leading others, that I had more to bring to the table. His message came through loud and clear because I knew he was in my corner. I knew that his words were coming from a place of care and love. Decades later, Dave continues to pay it forward by sharing his hard-earned knowledge with those who are hungry for guidance. Despite being in the final third of his life, he has no plans for stopping. In fact, he has some very interesting thoughts on retirement that I can't wait for you to hear. Dave's drive to mentor others is fueled in part by the lack of mentorship he had in his own life. And that's where we jump into the conversation.
Early on, some of the things that shaped me, when I grew up, you had 3 TV stations and radio was your primary source of getting your sports. And so I'd listen to the Cardinal baseball game every night, and then talk radio would come on after the game was over. And literally every night, whether if there was a baseball game on or not, I would turn my radio on to go to sleep, turn on the little sleep button for an hour, and I'd listen to talk radio. I'd listen to a guy, Jim White, and he'd bring on guests on goal setting. He'd bring on guests on meditation. He'd bring on guests on sports. It brought a variety of different topics that piqued my interest. But at the same time, my dad was a big learner as well. And he used to get tapes of some of the old gurus in really leadership. They were the godfather of who, the Earl Nightingales and Napoleon Hills. And they kind of
You get a little
started.
Zig Ziglar?
Zig Ziglar came. He was
Yes.
he was not the Godfather, but he came soon after. He was in that
Yes.
earlier wave of things, and so he had these tapes, and so he would give me these tapes to listen to. So learning audibly, falling asleep. I spent a lot of time with some of those early leadership type seminars and talks that they used to give, and I'd listen to them, and that kind of piqued my interest on leadership and business and success and entrepreneurship, which then obviously, then fast forward into actually having a career. I started out in a spiritual and formation of ministry. John Maxwell was a pastor, and even before he became popular with his 21 Laws of Leadership, he had a cassette thing. So all those influenced, I think, no question, had an influence on how my worldview and what I looked at and how I view picking yourself up from your bootstrap, and you go and you work and you try to figure things out. My dad obviously was a successful dentist, and obviously that shapes your view of working, and you work. And, multiple times in my 20s and 30s, I would say, I just wish I had somebody that I could talk to and ask questions to, and somebody that could mentor me and navigate some of these different areas, because I didn't have that. And it's funny, my generation, and you're not too far removed from it, but the people that were my peers that were maybe 10, 15 years older down to maybe 10 years younger than I am, almost was a gap of having people that would mentor us or that could help lead us. We were kind of thrust into positions way before we should have. And we just didn't have those. It was just a weird time. And it's still, people talk about it in business now. There's just this gap of generation, which is in my generation. There's just this gap. You've got a lot of young folks coming in, 20s, 30s, early 40s. And then you've got the old guard, the 60s and 70s that are still hanging on. There's this kind of this vacuum that kind of got lost. So, really a lot of what my leadership mentors and things that shaped me were almost self-taught, and to the point where it's sad to say that I didn't really have those people that I could point to that were instrumental, that were close to me. Now, there was a lot of people that I was around that I watched, but they were more models. They weren't really influencing my life is what I would like to see leadership and mentoring and all that needs to happen, needs to be life on life and being connected and have those relationships. So yeah, there's a lot there.
Well, one of the things that I can say from a personal standpoint is, as you may have felt the gap, I got to feel the bonus of you being somebody who may not have gotten that but was willing to give it. So for folks who were listening, Dave was investing in me when I was in my mid and late 20s in a really intentional way, when he had a young family and I'm sure plenty of other things that he needed to get to. But you made investments in me. I know the other guys that you made investments in as well, almost as if you weren't going to let that cycle continue when you saw it. And so, I'll say here, thank you that you didn't let your past be the total, dictator of what was going to be your present.
And I appreciate you saying that. It was intentional. There is a gap, and there's things that need to be taught to a younger generation. And I think it's even more important now than ever. I'm listening to my peers talk about slowing down, and I can't tell you how many people are in their 20s that are just craving, just sitting and talking and asking questions. And I'm like a grandfather to them. But they're looking for that. And it's just, they have not, good, bad, indifference, the way our culture and society is, they've not gotten just basic stuff. And they just are craving it, and they're looking for that guidance. And so, it's even more a passion now, I think, as I take that last third of my life and go, I don't know if there's anything more important at this point to being able to make a difference in true leadership development with a younger generation. And I'm just telling you, I'm almost screaming at the top of my lungs, at the top of the mountain, saying, y'all, we got to do this. This is vitally important. We've got time, we got energy, we've got knowledge. We need to share it. And so that's kind of I think that last third of my life, I want to re-engage that at an even deeper level than ever before.
Well, I want to come back to that and dig into that in a much more thorough way. But before we go deeply into that, I want to go back to, as you were getting out of school, given that you're somebody who has led so many businesses, 40 businesses, which is kind of mind-boggling to even say out loud. But do you think back to the very first, when did that entrepreneurial bug, was there a particular experience you had at a particular point? And you're like, oh, wait, this is fun. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in business.
I think making money as mowing lawns. And I mean, there was nothing like getting that cash. I don't know if I like working. But I just remember, it'd snow. And so I get my snow shovel out and I'd go around the neighborhood. It was weird. I don't want to say money was the driving force, but there was just something about, the reward of getting that.
There's immediate feedback there for sure.
Exactly. And what am I going to spend my money on? I'm going to go spend on a 25-cent piece of candy. I mean, it's weird, but that early on, when I looked at career choices, that always was, we don't have to get into talking about ministry, but I always had a knack for figuring out how to make money. It's just kind of one of those weird that I don't know if it's really about making the money. And money, people have, money's bad or evil, and it can be, obviously, yes. But it was one of those things of, what is successful business? Well, it is about being successful at your business. It's about providing jobs for people that are their livelihoods and being able to create those different things. And so I'm not a good manager. I'm more of a good pioneer. I go out and I can start and I can create, but I get bored very easy on the mundane same things over and over again. So I think it's just the way I was wired, to be honest with you, Tim. I don't think it was anything that shaped it. It's just kind of, I think there are good managers, that they are awesome at those systems and processes, and they love that, and they like the routine. And for me, routine is good if it's creating and it's starting. And I think that just feeds that entrepreneurial bent that you've got to have if you're gonna be successful. Now, I personally think anybody can do it. I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the world, or I think anybody can do it. I just think you got to find your strengths and your weaknesses to know where you need to fill in your gaps that you need help in, and being able to do that. So I think my strengths were creating businesses and creating systems, and that was my strength.
Yeah. When I first got a chance to know you, and I couldn't even, we've known each other so long, it's that, like, if I tell you the first time I met Dave Lovell, like, I have no idea. I can't remember a time when I didn't know
long time
Dave
ago,
Lovell.
brother. Long time ago.
But in that time of life, you were leading a Christian ministry, and you were investing in students and their spiritual formation. And I think back on what you were doing, the way you were doing that, then even that was entrepreneurial as I think back on it, because you weren't necessarily applying somebody else's methodologies to spiritual development and ministry. You were pioneering your own thing then. You were doing very unique things through the organization that you had created and that you were leading. So whether you're talking about money or the development of young people's spiritual lives, you use the word, that pioneering. That's been consistent for as long as I've known you in every way that I can think about. But there's a really important self-awareness piece that you just said that I think it's worth noting, which is to say, I really enjoyed the starting part and figuring out the systems. But after that, it didn't necessarily keep your attention. So talk a little bit about, as somebody who's had so many businesses and sold them and gone through that process over and over again, and you've got the whole kind of E-Myth principles around, we're going to create systems. Don't be fooled into thinking that entrepreneurship is about something new every day. You got to create systems that work over and over again and recognize that. But then you said, okay, I'm going to sell this business. I'm going to do the next thing. So talk a little bit about how that worked for you, how you came to that realization, and maybe it was all very natural, or maybe there were some instances where you realized, hey, I've got to continue to pioneer. I got to sell this thing and go on to the next thing. How did that evolve for you?
Yeah, I think I do get that question a lot, is how do you have multiple businesses and being able to manage them successfully? And I have been fortunate that I've made a lot of mistakes. Trust me, a ton of mistakes. Lost a lot of money. I lost more money than most people make in a lifetime. So, it's not like, I'm hitting 100% every time. But it is one of those things that you learn. I tell people all the time, is you've got to know your business. And while it may not be something I enjoy on the management, but the day-to-day tasks of what it takes to run a business, you better know what that is. You need to have that knowledge base. You just can't assume anything when it comes to a business. You need to know it. The other thing is to know your numbers, and I think you need to know what are your key performance indicators, your KPI. What are the things that truly drive your business? If you can know the business and you can know your numbers, it's kind of, I tell people, it's the scoreboard. I wake up in the morning and I'm looking at the scoreboard. I know what the score is, so I know where I am in the game. I know how much time is left. I know what quarter I'm in, or I know what the score is, up or down, or whatever. Those KPIs are like that scoreboard for me to be able to take a look at. And if you know your business, you're able to then take a look at that scoreboard and say, okay, something's not right, or something's changed, or something's not going, the momentum's changed or something. Then you got to go figure it out. Well, if you don't know your business, you don't know where to look. So I think being able to really understand the systems and processes are about knowing your business. You got to know what those things are, which means you better have planted your butt in it and known what they feel, because when somebody says something to them, you can say, no. I've been in your chair. Let me just tell you how I've dealt with it. Or, no, we're not going to do that because I've been there. I know what it takes to do your job. That's part of that. As far as buying and selling, I don't get emotionally involved in business. If somebody comes in and offers me money for something and it's a good ROI on what I'm doing, take it. Because I know that there's no finite number of opportunities. It's just everywhere there's another opportunity. There's another place to look. There's another business. There's another emerging industry that you can get involved with. So I have not cornered the market on this is the last opportunity that's ever there. It's never that way. And so I've been very, again, I just don't get emotionally tied to it, where a lot of people, it's like, this is their baby. Well, yeah, it's my baby. But if you're willing to give me a good return on that investment, I'll look at it. It's Corey Ten Boom's comedy is you learn to hold on to things loosely because you just never know when it's not going to be there. Well, that can be true in your family. You need to make sure that, business is just, look at the things as they come and be able to handle them as they arise and evaluate when you're there. So it's really never been people say, oh, you have this master plan. I really don't. It's more of this is the direction I'm going, but boy, if the course changes, I'm open to take a look at it.
Now, what's really interesting and what's really helpful in our conversation today is that I do know you, and I've known you for a really long time. And I'm just imagining, listening to all that you're sharing, if I just take all that at face value, and I don't know Dave Lovell, I hear a businessman who is on that kind of solid blocking and tackling. But I do know you, and so I also know that you care deeply about and invest heavily in people, which really gets to this idea of leading. So talk a little bit about your perspective on people and on leading people, because I know that you've spent a lifetime developing your thinking around that as well.
That is absolutely one of the most crucial pieces of being able to have multiple businesses to be able to do what I've done. If you don't have good people, and you aren't investing in developing them, you can't do it because there's just not enough time in the day. There's always a problem that arises that you have to deal with. And if you don't have those good people around you to do it, it can't be done. Now, there is so much that goes into that from the development side. You want to provide them the resources and to be able to grow in their skills in their life, not only just business-wise, but in their life. I know that, I say it all the time, is when you come in the door, game face comes on. I don't care what's going on outside the door. When you walk in, this is all about the business and the customers because they're there for a reason. They're there for that business. They don't really care what's going on in your life. But then I also say, but wait a minute, I want you to know something. I care deeply about what's going on outside those doors. So when we're outside those doors, I do want to know what's going on in your life because I know that affects what's happening when you walk in those doors. So I have to be cognizant of that to help them in those areas to say, is there things that you need or what's happening in your life? What do you need to grow in your personal life? Because it will affect them when it comes into business. This is not about just the business. It's about the people that you bring in. So developing them as people and helping them grow in their careers, but grow in their life. It's a tough job market. I want my staff, I don't care whether it's somebody that's a frontline, front desk worker, salesperson, or it's a upper level management person. I want them to think twice about leaving me, leaving this business, because I'll say, if there's a better opportunity and there's a better situation, go. Trust me, go. I don't ever want you not to go. But I also want you to know it's not always greener on the other side, and make sure that you understand what you have here. And it's not just money. It's about the culture, the relationships that you have. I want them to hurt. I want them to come back 5 years later and say, I should have never left. And thankfully, I've had people leave and come back. And I appreciate that because they're good people. And a lot of them I want back. And so it's about that person. For me, is I want you to be successful. I would love you to be with me, but if not, be successful. So having that attitude, I can't tell you how important people are. So you got to develop them in their life. It's not just the skills business, but they need to know the skills of business that they need to have. But then also, I think, outside, it's important to know that you care about their lives. And it's not just words. It's like, if I got to cry with you, I'll cry with you, whatever you need, because I care about you. Now, the other side of that is, and this is, I think, hard for people that are younger, they have a perspective of the business needs to be all that for me and take care of all needs, is having those high expectations don't change. And, in communicating, I think the folks that have developed and they understand is, I care about you, but I care about your success in that you need to have a standard that you need to think highly of. And I can't tell you how many times I've had the conversations with people where they're just struggling and I don't like this or I don't like this. And I say, what's sad to me is I care more about your success than you do. And that's just not going to work. And so it's not about not having expectations. It's really about having a loving, guiding hand of expectations to help them in their lives. But to understand, I'm laying a groundwork for you to be successful. You need to have a standard of excellence in your life and expect you to be successful. and not expect people to give you what you think you want or need. It's about what is the best thing for you as a person. I can't tell you how many times you have that conversation with your kids. When parents said that hated phrase, this hurts me more than it hurts you. In certain sense, it's like, it's like, I don't want to do this and tell you this stuff, but it's for your good. You need this. And as hard as this is going to be, I've got to have that conversation. And then there are times to move people on. I get it.
Sure.
Trust me. There are more. The situation we're in right now. Last night I was sick to my stomach because I know I have to make a pivot on a staff member that was very important to me. But there comes a time where you say, I can't care more about your success in your life than you. You can't drag everybody else down. So, it all goes into developing people. It's a huge topic, but I can't tell you to success. I don't care who you are. There is no self-made successful person. There's nobody that's self-made. There's always people that are involved in that process. And I think trying to be isolated and do it on your own, it doesn't work. Life doesn't work that way. So yeah, you're right. That development of people is absolutely crucial.
When we have close relationships with people that we are leading, many times I run into leaders who have gotten advice somewhere along the line. You can't be too close with your folks. And I get where they're coming from. And I would agree with them, because here's what I mean by that. If you don't have the courage to have the hard conversation with somebody who you are close with, in other words, you're going to spare them what they need to hear because you quote unquote care so much, then yeah, you probably shouldn't get too close or hire your friends or that type of thing. Now, I actually believe there's such an incredible world of value when we have close relationships, because I will tell you, I can just even think about my relationship with you. If I know that Dave Lovell cares about me and he comes to me and says, with care, you need to hear this. This is hard. This is hard. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and go back in time. I'm remembering a moment. There was a morning, I want to say it was a Saturday morning, and you were investing in me and about 3 or 4 other guys. We showed up for our Saturday morning meeting. None of us had prepared for the discussion. And I remember you getting pretty upset with us, and so justifiably so. And I remember walking away from that, and I don't remember exactly everything you said, but the sentiment was, I got enough going on. If you guys are going to jack around and not be prepared and not put the time in, then we don't need to be doing this. And you weren't mean, but you were clearly bothered by the fact that we had not prepared. And I think about it now. I've got 4 kids. If I was investing a Saturday morning in some young people and they were showing up not having done just the basics, I didn't have the perspective at the time, but what we both know now is that folks at that time of life generally have a lot more flexibility and time to get things done. There's really no reason. There's no good reason to show up for free, wise advice and help that you're not prepared for. But that was 25-ish years ago. I still remember that Saturday morning. And what you told us that morning was the truth that we needed to hear. We needed to understand that it was important to be prepared. We needed to understand honoring people's time. We needed to understand that there was more at stake than just hanging out on a Saturday morning, because you could have been with your wife and with your kids and spending time on those that were close to you.
It's funny because when you said that, I knew that's where you were going to go. and it wasn't really even the time, to be honest with you, Tim. That is a part of it. It's like, well, hold on, I prepared. Why are you not prepared? It really was that group of guys, you included in that. I expect more out of you, because, there are a lot of people that could walk in that door that, you know what, I kind of expect you not to be prepared. You all, I expect to be prepared. And I wanted you all to know this is you're different. It was more than just my time. It was, don't compromise yourself for, if you say you want to do something, do it. You have choices. Life is about choices. If you're going to say you're going to do something, then choose to commit to do it. Don't do it halfway. And that was my expectation of you because of who you guys were. And again, that expectation was clear. And it's funny you said that, because I remember the hard conversations, and I think you're dead on. If you don't care, you don't have the right to say anything to anybody. All you're doing is just throwing rocks at somebody. If you care, doggone it, I care. And you need to say, here's the thing is, you need to say the good stuff. And you need to say the hard stuff. And if just saying the hard stuff is not good enough, you got to say the good stuff. Like, man, I love you. You're awesome. You're the best ever. All those things need to go just as with it, because there may come a time that you do need to say the hard stuff at the same time.
The thing that's really interesting about that from a concept standpoint is that when I know that somebody cares, I receive that delta feedback in a totally different way than if I don't think the person cares about me. And so I knew that you did, so did the other guys. And so you're kind of left there like, wow, he's really upset, but I know that he cares about me. This isn't just about him kind of working out his own emotions. Like, I really need to think about what just happened here.
Well, you know what, Tim? I don't think you remember this. There was another conversation that you and I had that was even maybe a little more pointed.
Okay. Remind me of this one.
And we were in your living room. And I think I even said, Tim, I care more about your success than you do.
I think I am remembering a time in the living room. You were the first person that ever told me that I had something to offer other people. And I think that might be the conversation that you're talking about. We were sitting in the living room because I didn't see it. I was like, who am I? What do you mean? So I'm wondering if maybe that's the conversation that you're talking about.
Well, yeah, same one. I can't remember the context of what you were trying to do or not do.
Probably not.
But it was along the lines of maybe there's some life choices you were trying to really think through, and you were really waffling. And it was one of those is like, dude, you're selling yourself short. And it was along the lines of, look, I believe in you more than you believe in yourself, and that's sad. That's sad as an outsider that I see all this in you and you can't see it in yourself. So those hard conversations, it's like, well, how are you going to receive that? Well, you know what? If I care, that's the saddest thing in the world if I don't say that to you. It's like, dude, stop. You've got something to offer this world that if you don't do that, it's sad. And so, but it was one of those is, again, if you see something and you care, you say it. You don't just not say it. You got to say it.
Well, if you're willing to say the hard things, I think it is the best thing in the world to work with and lead people with whom you have close relationships, because the upside is amazing. The upside is incredible. And as long as we have the courage to participate in the harder conversations as well, then you get the best of all worlds. And what's really interesting, as you think about what we're doing right now, what we're talking about, the podcast that this that this is on, I'm 50 now. And for 20 focused years at this point, I've been digging into the issue of leading, and more every day over time, leading other leaders. And you were the first person to suggest that I be leading in this way. You did see more in me than I saw in myself, but because you were willing to verbalize it, along with all the other life events that kind of come along, here we are having this conversation 25 years later, of a door that you were really the first person to open it as wide as you did. And so I'm forever thankful for conversations like that. I knew I was with somebody who cared about me, and you weren't just throwing rocks, as you said. You were helping me, even through the hard thing.
I appreciate you saying that, Tim. And a lot of times you say things because you're going to get something out of it. As a business leader, develop the people, there is a tangible return on that investment in people. But I think if you're going to you need to do that with everybody, whether you're going to get something out of it or not. And obviously you are not going to, for me, I wasn't going to gain anything by you becoming who you are today. And so there wasn't that, okay, there's a return on investment. But that return on investment is really taking a look at saying, look, there's somebody here. There are so many good people out there with great skills, but they're lost, and they need resources and people in their lives to help develop those things. And I get greater joy out of watching the success of other people than even my own success. I get more warm fuzzies out of your story than I do whatever I've accomplished in my life. It's just more fun to be able to see those young leaders develop now in their 50s with their kids and all that stuff. It's way more rewarding than anything I've ever accomplished in my life.
Well, that is a really good segue, because you mentioned earlier the last third of your career, of your life. You have a little bit of a different perspective, I think, than just riding off into the sunset and playing golf 3 times a week and whatever your hobbies might be. So talk a little bit about how you are looking at this last third of your own life.
Yeah, and it could be life circumstances. I mean, obviously, I'm to that point in my life where I am older, but I look back at just circumstances that have helped in my life, and I'm looking at the last third of my life. And it really is, if you want to break it into segments, it really is about a third of my life is still left. If all is said and done, everything goes well, whatever it is. And I think it's really been a perspective for me when I say, okay, I want to reevaluate where I'm going. And it also has been struck with me as I have gotten older and I have started to feel differently just because of age, emotionally, physically, all those things. And my peer group, it's just started to get inside of me is that I'm hearing the word slowing down. And that really was the process that started me really thinking and developing and looking at my own life. And it kind of got me thinking, I was like, well, why? And it started probably 4, 5, 6 years ago. And now it's become a real passion for me. And I know I was joking with you, and this is how this conversation started, was, I've decided that I'm going in at the home base at 100 years old. I'm going in with my hair on fire, and I'm going in hard, and I'm going to dive in hard. And I'm going in with a tequila in one hand, a cigar in the other, and I'm going in hard. And I'm not going to slow down just because I'm 100 years old. I'm just not going to do that. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it really is trying to communicate is this is not the time to slow down. This is the time to maybe reprioritize and continue the race differently. And so I don't want to bash. I want to start saying things differently and say, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. And you should not stop, because retirement is a construct and a lie. There is nothing about retirement that we now hold to, that it's just one of these things that we assume. Retirement is right, good, justified in what's supposed to happen. It's not. The exact opposite is actually true. This is a modern day perspective that has happened that is absolutely a lie. And that's why I'm saying it so harshly, because I want to get people's attention on this, is retirement is not bad. If you want to slow down, you want to reprioritize what you're doing, I get it. That's fine. If you want to go smell the roses of the fruit of your labor, that's great. Do it. But at the same time, you need to rethink, what are you going to spend your time on? Because you have wisdom and knowledge and time and resources to devote to people that need those things. And for you to disengage and retire and go try to play golf every day, I don't even know how to do that. Now, I love golf. I mean, I'm on a mission to play every top 100 golfer. But I don't know if I could do that every day of my life, because there's got to be something more. But here's the thing. When I looked at this, Okinawa, which is, an Asian in the Pacific East, on that, they have the longest life expectancy in the world, 10 years longer than any other nation, industrial nation in the world, 10 years longer. And when they did a study on why, they did a study on how is it happening? Well, interesting enough, their culture, they stop eating when they're not full. They have smaller plates. They have a socially connected society that starts early on, mentoring, older, younger connections, working together. And then the other thing is, they don't have retirement. They don't even have a word in their language that even that says retirement. That's not even a concept or an understanding that they have. And so they work until they die. They also have a connectedness to people, but then they don't even think about it, because they live their life with what they call ikigai, is a purpose. That they have a purpose. What is your ikigai is such ingrained in their culture, which starts from that societal connectiveness. What is your purpose to society in giving to society? What gets you out of bed every morning? And there's so much research coming out now. Japan did a research on 43,000 people, and they found out the people that had an ikigai at the beginning of that study, and it was a 10-year study, that those folks that had that purpose had a 5 to 7 year longer lifespan at the end of their life. And it was statistically such an anomaly that they had to go back and look at it and started looking at that they were happier, they were healthier, they were relationally connected. All those things that you go, okay, wait a minute. This is just who we are. And to say, I'm going to stop my ikigai, my purpose, And I'm not going to have a purpose other than myself and what I'm going to do in my golden years, which if you talk to anybody that goes into it, they say, this is going to be great. Well, that lasts a couple months and they start going, well, I need to do something. What am I going to do? And it's not that I'm saying that you shouldn't retire. It's not that we want to retire. It's just we want to change what we do and how we spend our time and what we love. And so I'm just want to tell people is to stop. It's okay to slow down, but you need to re-engage and rethink of what you're doing. And I want to say you need to re-engage and put yourself back into people's lives, particularly a young generation that needs to hear it. This is the time that we need to start picking up the pace. It's just a different direction maybe than what you were doing where you were just committed to your career. Well, I'm saying rethink that perspective and re-engage into people's lives and to start running and finding people and pour your life into them, give them the wisdom, sit down with them, have a cup of coffee, but start to commit to this. And look, I can say this because I do feel tired more. I do get sore easier. But at this point, I'm going to say, so what? There are so many studies out there that you can gain muscle strength and mass at 95 years old. So do you want to quit life or do you want to re-engage life? I'm just here to say it's time to keep moving and we need to keep moving. And if you need to take a nap, take a nap. If you need to go get a massage, get a massage. If you need a Tylenol, take a Tylenol. It doesn't mean that you disengage life. And that's why it's just become such a passion for me. I kind of even jotted down my 5 S's and I got to look at them. One is you got to have a structure in your life. You need to structure your life. And if you retire and don't have structure, you are going to flounder and not to do that. You need to have stimulation in your life. You need to have stimulation from your brain and your body and the movement that you need to do. If you want to sit around, within a year, you're going to start to really hurt your body. Well, you need to move more as you get older. You need to have that satisfaction in your life. Where are you getting satisfaction in your life? You need to have that social connection with other people, and you've got to connect with other people. And then you need to have a story that you share, whether it's your own peers or a younger generation, that gives you some of that purpose that is there. And so, as you can tell, I'm a little worked up. It's just one of those things. I can't tell you how many times my peers say, oh, I'm just tired. I can't put up with it or I've done it. It's like, this is a time that may be more important, and maybe in our culture, more important than any time in modern day, that we need to re-engage with the younger generation and help stimulate those things, give them some resources and support and encouragement that they need and some wisdom that we have. It's one of those things that I hope people will just take seriously. It's time to re-engage and get your purpose out there and share it with the younger generation. And I just don't think it's time to slow down. I just think it's time to speed up.
If people remember nothing else from this conversation, they can think about what their own version of is coming around third, going for home base with their hair on fire,
Yep.
a tequila in one hand, cigar in the other, and if you need to take a nap, take one, and then get back at it.
So you start thinking about that. Is that third base of, you got a long way home, long way. This is not a step away. You're a long way from home. What a waste of your life if you take a third of it and not make it purposeful.
What a fun episode that was to record. To be able to sit and visit with somebody who is not only an incredible entrepreneur, who's bought and sold businesses and bought and sold businesses and bought and sold businesses, but somebody who has invested in me personally, and to be able to recall some of those times from so many years ago. So given that, there's a couple of things I just want to make a point of emphasis on as we wrap up today's episode. The first one really comes from my own story. You heard a couple of examples there where Dave was not willing to spare telling me the truth that I needed to hear. And in both cases, there was an aim really in a single direction, which is, I see potential in you. I see more in you than you see in yourself. And so it just makes me wonder about us as leaders. Are we telling people about the potential we see in them? And are we willing to have those challenging conversations? Challenging conversations are so much more valuable and effective when we deeply care about the people that we are bringing that challenge to. To just challenge people, Dave's term was just throwing rocks. If you're just challenging people but you don't care deeply about them, it's far less effective. It doesn't impact them in the same way. But I knew that Dave cared about me, And so when he challenged me about the potential that he saw in me, when he challenged me to be sharing who I am with other people and to be leading other people, I received it in a totally different way than I would have if it wasn't coming to me from somebody who cared deeply about me. So it's worth thinking about, are you having the challenging conversations that you need to with people that you see potential in? And if you have a deep care for them, those conversations are going to be much more effective for you. So think about that as we wrap up today. And then the other thing I want you to think about is this last third of life perspective that Dave has, this kind of anti-retirement. Now, if you're going to slow down, as you heard him say, yes, okay, the reality of physicality, of getting older, might require you to slow down. But at the same time, is it really your end goal to do nothing? I mean, why would we take the time in our lives when we have the greatest amount of wisdom to share with others and just pack it up and sit over in a corner by ourselves? So I love how Dave is thinking. It really is countercultural, and it really is challenging. And it brings me to the question that I want to leave you with today, and that is this. Do you have a purpose that's big enough to keep you going in that final third of your life? I'm Tim Spiker, reminding you to be worth following and to follow us wherever you receive your podcasts. If you've heard something valuable today, please share our podcast with your colleagues and friends. And if you're up for it, leave us a 5-star review. Thanks for listening.